Thank you very much to all the callers who have called in. And at this moment, I'm going to close the public hearing at 4:50 p.m. And we will begin board discussion. My computer is about to run out of juice, so I'm going to take a moment to plug it in. There we go. So we can continue. There we go. Let's start off with Member Escobedo, who is our liaison, if you'd like to make some initial comments, and then we'll go into board discussion.
Surely, I would like to first thank all the presenters who testified, the members of the public who phoned in, and all those who wrote letters about the item. Very much appreciate the thoughtful input, and also appreciate CDE and all the work in reviewing those 9 requirements. It was a painstaking task, I'm sure, in reviewing them. I just want to share that I know that these district reorganization proposals are very emotional and raise some real tough issues for school districts, and what is community identity. And I think we heard from both sides many strong views. I do understand that the county committee comply with the requirements of the local territory transfer process, and that determined that all 9 minimum threshold conditions in Ed Code were substantially met, and CDE showed us the evidence. However, I'm still concerned with the issues raised by Orange Unified regarding the impact of the transfer. And I'm also concerned about the long-term effects on culture and the precedent it would set. I heard that there were 2 other areas that could transfer as well. So those are my initial thoughts, and I look forward to having more discussion and thoughts about this item.
Thank you so much. With that, we're going to open up board discussion. So if you have a comment or a question, please raise your hand. I do want to say before we start board discussion that for those who are panelists, if a board member has a question for you, you will be recognized and unmuted so you can respond. But please do not raise your hand during the board's deliberation or seek to engage unless you're called upon. With that, I'm going to start with Member Orozco Gonzalez.
I want to, I think I concur with what Member Escobedo said. I think that the CDEs did an excellent job in doing an analysis. And I know that they're trying to go with more local control, but I am concerned of the fiscal impact this will have on Orange County, Orange Unified School District. And also, I understand that it could be a very tedious process to fill out the necessary paperwork for the intra-district permits. But this is a choice that we're making as a family. When they purchased their property and they decided that they wanted to live there, it was in Orange Unified School District territory. So I'm so concerned over the fiscal impact and that the students that are currently going to Orange County, Orange Unified School District schools have to now apply to move to stay with their own school. So I think I still have a lot of concern over that. So it's more of a comment than it is a question.
Thank you. And Member Lewis?
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you to the CDE and to the 2 districts for their presentation, and for all of the parents and staff members who called in public comment. I do agree or have some of the same concerns expressed by my 2 colleagues. I do have a couple of questions for the CDE staff. During the presentation, you seemed very convinced that other territories left in the Tustin area would not follow suit and also try to remove themselves from the Orange Unified School District. I just need, what do you base that on? If you could just elaborate on that a little bit more. It was a quick comment and then moved on, but What do you base that on?
Yeah, it's for those of you that have been on the board for a while, that's a big concern for us. It has always been in territory transfers is a concern that this kind of starts the cascading effect for others, other territories that meet the same circumstances. Certainly there's a potential for that, but we based our recommendation, our findings on the fact that, if we look at those areas that remain that have similar circumstances in terms of being part of North Tustin, the North Tustin area, there really aren't that many left. So the ultimate impact would not be really great. We're not saying certainly that those areas wouldn't go. It's just that if they do, it's not. There are limited numbers of homes and students that are left in the North Tustin area that are still part of Orange Unified.
Okay, thank you. The other question was, we talked a lot about the 2012 transfer of Rocking Horse. What was the 2002 transfer? What was the circumstances behind that? Sorry if I missed that.
Yeah, it was an area that was very close to the Rocking Horse Ridge transfer. It had, again, it was an area that the county committee approved and none of the districts opposed. It had some geographic circumstances, I believe, that probably prompted the local actions. It's kind of separated from the rest of Orange Unified by a reservoir and a very a preserve-like area. So I'm not that familiar with it, but if I were looking at it, I would assume that there were some geographic concerns or geographic issues that were raised that prompted the county committee to approve it and prompted both school districts to remain neutral.
Thank you. I just have one more question for the Orange Unified School District regarding the IT process. I'm familiar with the process, and I know that a determining factor of whether or not students get a transfer to the school of choice is if the school that they're going to, the enrollment is already impacted, they can transfer for educational programs. There were several comments about the process being difficult. Could you just succinctly just explain if your process is any different than the normal process and reasons for transfer?
I believe that's for me to be unmuted. Thank you. Thank you for the question. In Orange Unified School District, we follow the education code on interdistrict transfers. So there are some that are automatic based on parent work, childcare, educational programs. And we have 401, as was mentioned, that are on interdistrict transfer to Tustin. And then we don't think our process at all is difficult because there's no questions asked if they meet the education code and the criteria to transfer. However, if they are in our district, we do take time to ask them, would you like to visit our schools? And we have an internal process to discuss, would you still like to visit El Medina? Would you like to visit Santiago? But it's certainly not difficult in that attendance area. Like was stated, there are 21 students that are on interdistrict process. The petitioners who spoke here today are on ongoing continuous, which is part of the education code as well, transfers. There's no questions asked. The issue is on the side of Tustin that I believe like 7 or 8 years ago, they may have closed for enrollment, but that has nothing to do with us. And they certainly are embracing, right now, Tustin has embracing, because of declining enrollment, which was one of the aspects that we talked about, they certainly are embracing any student, and there's no problem for any of these families if they'd like to transfer to Tustin Unified, and we would certainly support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to call on Member Olken and then Vice President Glover Woods. Member Olken.
Thank you so much. And I just want to also thank all of you who presented today and all of the public who called in. You hear a lot of we heard a lot of emotion and a lot of emotion about this item. And I think schools feel very personal. And in fact, I think the very best schools feel really personal. And so there's something about what we heard that to me is a sign of, strong communities in all of these schools. And that said, I do just one comment, and then I have some questions for our CDE colleague. Just a general approach or belief that I have is that the schools belong to the public instead of the other way around. The public, so the schools belong to the public instead of the other way around, in that the public belongs to any particular school. And I just want to put that out there for us as we're thinking about this, because, because I think that's an important philosophical approach. And that said, all of the public comment and the assertions from Orange about the impact on the diversity of the schools and perhaps the motivation for this proposal, I think, weigh on all of us heavily. And so my questions are really trying to get back to the data that we saw about what the potential impact would be. So I was wondering if I think I have three questions. One is just a reminder of the number of students that would be impacted by the territory transfer, and how that relates to the overall size of the two districts in question. And then the third question is just a refresher, because it was a long time ago, before the public comment, on why CD does not believe that the territory transfer would have a significant impact on the diversity of the schools involved. So I'm just hoping to see that data one more time.
So Larry, I think we are asking for you to pop up again and provide that data.
I'm working backwards from the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the socioeconomic indicators that we look at. At the district level, there really isn't a whole lot of difference. But the Orange Unified's concern is more at the school level, and at the schools that serve the area, in Orange Unified or the schools in Tustin Unified that would serve the area, there is quite a bit of difference. And again, as been alluded to, I think in a lot of the comments, the North Tustin unincorporated area is considered one of the more affluent areas of Orange County. And these are the schools these Tustin Unified schools are the schools that would serve that area. So it kind of reflects the demographics of North Tustin.
Thanks. Can I ask a clarifying question on that? Just to make sure I understand what I'm looking at. Thank you. So I just want to make sure I understand. So the way I read this, to take, for example, eligibility for free and reduced price meal program, students who the overall percentage of eligibility at Panorama is 20%. Or 19.9. And then the school that students, if this territory transfer takes place, the school that those students would in essence be reassigned to is Arroyo Elementary, where the free and reduced price meal program eligibility is 7.2%. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe just while we have that slide up, to note the English learner population is smaller at Tustin, and the students with socioeconomically disadvantaged student population is disparate as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we're all reading the same lines of the graph.
Yeah. And so while the first chart you showed us,
About racial position?
no, so just the districts as a whole are relatively similar, but the particular neighborhoods or the schools that would serve the kids in the particular transfer area have the discrepancies or the differences that you just showed us on the last slide.
Yeah, correct. As I think I mentioned earlier, if you look at Tustin Unified, certainly the elementary and the middle and the high school. And let's just look at the high school, because I pointed out some of the differences at the other high schools in Tustin Unified. Foothill High School, as I mentioned, was relatively equal. We're going to move to a move to the racial ethnic composition. Foothill High is relatively equivalent in terms of the two major racial ethnic groups, Hispanic, Latino, and white, about 45% apiece. But if you look at the other two high schools in Tustin Unified, Tustin High School, which is, I think, 82% Hispanic and less than 8% white, and then Beckman High School, which is
I think that's correct.
20% for both
What is that? What is
Hispanic, Latino students and white students, but is 40% Asian. The composition of those three high schools in Tustin are very different. And that's what we're looking at here, just the area that serves the North Tustin community. But when you aggregate the populations of the three high schools, they reflect the district-wide comparisons.
Gotcha. And this may be more detailed than you are prepared to answer. But do you know if these districts, does Tustin have neighborhood schools up through high school? And
Yes.
if you don't know, yes.
Tustin has elementary, middle, and high schools, just like Orange Unified does. And
that last slide showed the feeder patterns.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
All right, Vice President Glover Woods, and then Member Yoshimoto Tari.
Just one question for CDE and two questions for Orange Unified. Just to clarify, can you share with us, when you were looking again at the data and the ethnic composition, the rationale of looking at all of the Tustin high schools in total for the ethnic breakdown, for the demographic breakdown, as opposed to looking at the high schools and the middle school that would be in the feeder pattern of the actual area in question. And let me say before you answer, sir, I understand that if you were to look at the districts in full, that the percentages, demographic percentages are very similar. I'm looking more so for an understanding on why that would be utilized as part of the rationale, as opposed to looking at the schools that would be actually the home schools, if you will, for this section in question.
Right. The whole point of this condition of whether or not the proposed transfer would have negative effects on the district or a school's ability to offer an to educate students in an integrated environment, that's what we're looking at when we look at the schools. We only showed Panorama Elementary because the effects would be largest on Panorama Elementary because of the size of the school, about fewer than 400 students. And it's got more grade levels than a middle school or a high school, so the number of schools in the transfer area would be greater. So pulling, at 50, it was about 14%, I believe, they indicated of the students out of Panorama Elementary based on the the racial ethnic percentages of the students in the Panorama Heights area would change things very little. It would move the percentage of Hispanic or Latino students at the school from 35.4% to 35.8%. It would move the percentage of white students at the school from 46.1% to 47.3%. So given that effect, and that's what we're looking at, what's the effect of the transfer on the ability to all have an integrated environment? We didn't see one.
Okay, and am I correct in understanding that the percentage difference for the middle school and the high school were minimal?
Yeah, and again,
what was
the middle
communicated?
school and the high school is larger.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of student populations relative to the elementary school. Additionally, the grade levels that are affected are fewer. You have 3 grade levels at a middle school, 4 grade levels at a high school versus the 6 grade levels that you would have at an elementary school. So the numbers of students that would transfer from a middle school or the high school are smaller, and the enrollments are larger at those schools. So the effects, instead of 1 or 2 percentage points shift, it would be in the tenths of a percentage point.
Okay, thank you. That helps to clarify. And my 2 questions for the representative from Orange Unified. One, can you share with us the number of interdistrict interdistrict permit requests to Tustin Unified that have not been honored? And so I'll start with that question, and then I have one last question for the district reps.
We have absolutely no interdistrict transfers that have been denied on appeal, which is the process to the county. 0 for Tustin Unified.
Thank you very much. My last question is in relation to the concern, the impact that has been communicated by the district on removal of the students from the Panorama Heights area. I noticed that one of the concerns was that there would be reduced parental participation at Panorama Elementary School. Can you share with us the rationale for believing that there would be reduced parental participation if the students in Panorama Heights were removed?
Well, Panorama Elementary is the community school closest to the proposed transfer area. Their attendance area would be cut in half. The school that they would go to if the transfer went to Tustin is Arroyo. It is farther away. We would lose 57 parents at that school that are highly involved, highly engaged, and you heard some of them speak this evening. So it is the community school for Panorama Heights. It has the name Panorama Elementary. And it is also a very, very small school. So 57 students is a huge impact, and losing the families that are right across Crawford Canyon, losing all of those families that are engaged in your school is a significant issue.
Are you, any other questions, Vice President Glover Woods? Member Yoshimoto Tari.
Thank you, Board President. I recognize that these decisions are very difficult. There are many factors. It's very personal, and the process takes years. So thank you to everybody who spoke today and to CDE for preparing the report and those involved at the local level. I did want to make a comment. I'm appreciative of a process that doesn't have complete deference to the previous level of appeal, not due to any lack of trust to the previous level, but I think the system and the process is stronger when there are checks and balances in place. And particularly in a case like this where we're talking about redistricting. One particular motion may have one effect, but looking over time and over decades, several redistricting efforts could significantly increase community isolation and reduce opportunities for integration and diversity. And this morning, our student leaders spoke of that importance for them in their work, and the idea of modeling the inclusivity and community, and sometimes helping it be healthy to go to school with people that you don't spend time with outside of school, to have richer dialogue and have opportunities to see different perspectives, can have a great benefit. That being said, I think that the declining enrollment argument is a difficult one for me, because Tustin actually had a larger percent of declining enrollment than Orange did. And the racial diversity is somewhat, there are no thresholds, right, set in ed code. So there's some shifts in racial diversity, but one could argue that it's not significant. Where I do see more cause for concern is in the economic diversity proposed in the move. I think it was the previous slide, Larry, where we were looking at the percent of free and reduced lunch. That was much more significant to me than the racial diversity component. And
if you look at the school level, it's even more acute.
It's more acute at the school level than it is at the district level. And I did want to mention that. And I also wanted to ask a question. I don't know if this is directed perhaps to Orange first, and then perhaps to somebody representing Tustin. But one of the public comments were made about the timelines for requesting interdistrict permits. And can somebody speak to that? If someone, I think one of the comments said that by the time you know if you're in to the other, is it because of the appeal process? I'm wondering if that's what the comment was about.
Shall I address that?
Please.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think part of it has to do with Tustin Unified has moved up their timelines. They have a whole website dedicated to interdistrict transfers, and they actually start as early as January. And that's very, very early to start accepting. It's not that we're trying to block or hold anybody back, but our process usually starts with, we're an open enrollment district. We allow students to move throughout the district. So we coincide that with our open enrollment process and interdistrict transfer at the same time. So we ensure that we have an equitable process. And so ours is usually late February. So it's not that we're trying to in any way block anybody, but Tustin does have a more aggressive, they have a website that explains how to do it, and it starts very early that they accept interdistrict transfers, very early in January.
Regardless of the outcome of this today's motion, I think that might be something to take a look at locally, just for the parents' sake, regardless of the vote. It would be to think about the timing of the process, because it can be very stressful for parents to.
We'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Would I be able to jump in on that and explain it from the Tustin, the parent perspective?
Sure.
Okay, so my students have been on transfer since kindergarten, and they're now in 6th grade. So this process has taken, a good amount of time. But when we first started the process, the Tustin does have what's called an early transfer period that does open in January. And initially, the process aligned with when the release forms were available from Orange Unified. We could apply for our release forms from Orange and submit in time to comply with Tustin's early decision. We didn't get a decision back from Tustin until later in spring, maybe March or April, but we were allowed to submit that request early, and we were able to get released from Orange at that time. Unfortunately, and the timing was exceptionally horrible because of the pandemic, in 2021, all of a sudden the release form wasn't available by Orange. We couldn't even get a release form to submit to Tustin until after February, when their period had closed. And that was the first time that transition had taken place, and that shift in time frame, and that has continued ever since. So it's forced the families, again, the anxiety and that stress and that annual process. to have to submit to Tustin and basically, beg them to hold a spot pending getting that release form in time for their decision process. Tustin is also an open enrollment district. They allow their students to participate to select which school they prefer to go to, whether it's their neighborhood school or the one across town, based on those programs. So they had the exact same situation that Orange, but they have kept their process consistent. And again, right in the middle of the pandemic in January of 2021, we were hit with this shift and misalignment in the transfer period or transfer dates. And I can't even tell you how many people, just the emotional well-being of the kids, especially in that vulnerable time, has just been astronomical and seriously detrimental. And to counter the superintendent's comments, I know dozens of families personally who've had appeals or requests for transfers denied with no reasons given, just simply parents' choice is not acceptable. And, those parents were forced to find other either private schools or, go through the appeal process, which again is very stressful.
Superintendent Hansen, but you did mention that after the appeal process, there haven't been any denied.
That is correct. We do have an internal process where we ask our families to visit our schools, meet with principals, explore our educational programs, because we are very proud of them. But at the end of the day, we never deny an appeal to the Orange County School Board. We allow our parents to transfer. That's why we have 401 students in Tustin that we wish were with us. But, that's what we do. We've always allowed our families to go. We can adjust the timelines. We're happy to look at that to make it easier so that families don't have stress. But Tustin, I'm looking at their website right now. Their transfer application period is a very short window. It's only January 9th through the 27th. It doesn't give us time to manage all our open enrollments. And we have several, over 400 ongoing continuing transfers that we continue to approve.
Vice President Glover Woods, it looks like you want to come back in. Is that right?
I do. Just one
please.
Follow-up question, because I'm in hearing Superintendent Hansen's response, it led me to believe maybe I didn't ask my original question appropriately. When I was asking about the number of inter-district permits that were denied, I know you mentioned that none have been denied after appeal. Prior to appeal, how many have been denied?
None of them have been denied. What we share with our parents is we have a process. We say, please look at our schools. And then our executive directors take them to visit our principals and the programs. And then they meet with the executive director. And if they still are not satisfied, they are not denied, they're allowed to go. So none have been denied internally. If they would like to move, they are allowed to move and transfer.
So do they have to appeal? I don't mean to beat this, but I'm trying to get clarification.
There is a process.
Do they need to appeal?
There is a process where they would ask to speak with the executive director for their special circumstances. And there have been special circumstances which have been mentioned here, the mental health and the stress and the health of their children. And that's an automatic. They're allowed to go. They're allowed to transfer.
I'm not sure I'm
as
getting
well as
a clear answer, but it's okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're wondering about the people who are not automatic. That's what we're wondering about.
I think, okay.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay.
I think we're going to go ahead and move into a decision-making discussion probably at this point. I'd just like to share my thanks as well to all the folks who have called in. I understand, parents' concerns about knowing from year to year where their children will go to school and the value of being able to walk up the street to your school and all of those things. I also, however, have the concerns that many of us have already raised. The slide that is up before us now demonstrates the very dramatic differentials at the school level for socioeconomically disadvantaged students and free and reduced price lunch student proportions if we were to approve this transfer of territory. So I think that's a very important part of the integration goal that is part of what we need to be looking at. So I just want to share that concern. And I also understand that one of the criteria is that it should not be primarily about real estate values. And I certainly understand that many parents are really looking for close proximity to their homes for their students, but we also heard testimony that there are real estate values at stake here that are driving some of the discussion in the community. So that is another concern that I have as the basis for approving this. I don't know if anybody else who has not had a chance to share their views wants to do so before we seek a motion. Member Rodriguez.
Yes, I just want to say that I, as I'm reading a lot of this, I'm remembering 1976, East Palo Alto, and how eventually the city was left without a high school. And I just kept, as I'm reading everything and listening to both the petitioners and the appellants, I keep thinking about that. And I really haven't found a substantial claim for this reorganization. And I do also want to thank everyone, the CTE for all of their work on this. But those are my concerns.
Thank you. Member Patillo-Bronson?
Yeah, I also find this slide pretty troubling. The disparities in terms of the different school districts and school sites are not terribly subtle. And I think the language that's actually in the CDE motion, effectively, that there's no compelling reason to transfer the territory, but no compelling reason enough to reverse the county committee's approval of the territory transfer. I think the slide actually offers an alternative vision of what might be compelling enough to reverse. And then maybe just last thing I'll lift up is, I think, Carl Cohn, during the public comment, I think raised the specter of what this means in terms of precedent, and also how future boundary changes might be viewed. And I think that is significant and something we have to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. I thank you for that. And I guess as I seek a motion, I want to also agree with Member Yoshimoto Tari that it sounds like aligning and smoothing the transfer processes may be more helpful than transferring this territory from one district to another. Member Rodriguez, are you wanting to raise your hand again, or is it still up from before?
I was being handy.
Okay. So I'd like to see if there is a motion. Hearing the sense of the board, we may want a motion to deny the transfer, but if we have a different motion, I would take whichever one you want to offer.
I wonder, Dr. Hammond, what would the wording be if we deny this transfer so that we can follow the legal parameters on these type of transfers?
I think I'm going to ask our executive director, but no findings are needed. So I think all we would need to say is that we do not affirm the actions of the county committee to approve the proposal. But let me ask Executive Director Brooks Allen if he, or our Chief Counsel Judy Sias, if they would want to word it a particularly different way.
So with the caveat that I'm waiting for Ms. Shari to correct me if I'm wrong, is I understand the motion would be to deny the transfer.
Well, the actions that the education code gives the state board is either to affirm the actions, which is what we've listed here as our recommendation. The motion would be to reverse the actions, just
Reverse the action. So that's the wording that we need.
and you wouldn't have an electionary issue, because if you reverse the actions, there will be no election.
Okay, Member Escobedo, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And I would like to move to reverse the actions of the county committee to approve the proposal to transfer territory from Orange USD to Tustin USD.
And do I have a second on that proposal?
Second.
Member Rodriguez, thank you.
Second.
We have second, third, and fourth, but I think I saw Member Rodriguez first. Is there any further discussion of the motion? Okay, then I'll ask Brooks Allen to call the roll for the vote.
President Darlene Hammond.
Aye.
Member Escobedo.
Aye.
Vice President Glover Woods.
Yes.
Member Lewis.
Yes.
Member McQuillan.
Aye.
Member Olken.
Yes.
Member Orozco Gonzalez.
Aye.
Member Patillo Brownson.
Yes.
Member Porter.
Yes.
Member Rodriguez.
Yes.
Member Yoshimata Tauri.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. That was a long and important discussion, and I think we want to reaffirm both the intentions of the board and the desire that the transfer process be smooth and unstressful for parents who need it, but also that we retain the borders of the district as they stand. I am going to postpone until tomorrow. I want to thank Larry for all of your diligent work and for your presentation. I'm going to postpone reopening item 1 until tomorrow.